So post-structuralism is a subset, which means it's, again, postmodernism up here, branch off into post-structural. If you're branching off into post-structuralism, the main thing you need to understand about that, you can just put it in brackets now, is that it's basically represented by an essay by Roland Barthes. It was called Death of the Author. And it basically says that post-structuralism, right? Post-structuralism basically says that meaning is dictated by the person receiving the text, not the person writing the text. Post-structuralism says, because it's a form of postmodernism, just because Shakespeare intended this to mean X, he wanted this to mean that there's chaos. That doesn't mean that it in fact does mean that. It's about how I receive the text. So meaning is actually determined not by the author in a text, but by the responder, by the reader. So that's why the essay is called Death of the Author, because it doesn't matter what the author wanted something to mean. It's about what it means to you. So do you see how there's an emphasis on subjective? It's about how you receive it. So that's the post-structural element. And I think Atwood does really play into that because she's trying to suggest through that pedagogical style, if you want to put a link to the pedagogical style, that it's up to us to determine what the play means. I don't necessarily agree with that perspective of post-structuralism. I just think Atwood is responding to it as something that is a way of thinking now in literature, that it's not so much about what they wanted. How can we say that it doesn't matter what the author wanted to do when that literally clearly has shaped some of the things we are directly seeing in the play, right? How can we ignore that? Well, my argument would be it's clearly a mix of both. Clearly, how they have decided to represent something is going to somewhat limit the scope of meaning that we can take from it. But it's also fair to say that just because Shakespeare wanted me to feel this way about imprisonment, if I read the whole text and I feel a different way about imprisonment, it's still equally meaningful. It just didn't mean what he wanted it to mean because I was coming at the text with a different context. So it's basically a reconciliation between the author's personal context, why they wrote it, and my life up until now. That's how I view it. Like your life up until the point of reading the text is going to actually determine how you interpret that text. But it's not like you could interpret it in any way. Obviously, how they presented it will limit the scope of that. So I think it's a combination of both. But post-structuralism basically says, hey, it's not only about, maybe take it that way, it's not only about what the author meant. It's clearly about what context and perspective the reader's coming at the text with. So there's a circle within another circle, right? So you've got the big circle, a big circle of meaning, okay? Shakespeare wanted to represent this. Now, when I come at the text, my own circle could be anywhere inside that bigger circle. So there's a small circle within the bigger circle, and depending on where that smaller circle sits in the bigger circle will depend on how I receive the text. There's only so much I could take away from the text. It's a lot, but where that smaller circle of interpretation sits is up to me.